everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk About How to Recognize the Season that you are in. Now, we can all agree that we're all in a season, whether we know what it is, whether we want to be in it, whether we're wrestling with it, we all are in a season. And today I am joined by the very, very lovely Jenny Hickson. And she is one of my dearest friends. And I love her to pieces. And so Jen, welcome. I know we're going to have a chat because we're friends and we've got lots to say, but tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm going to throw it back to you because you're used to asking people these three questions, but I'm going to throw it to you. What do you love? Yeah. What do you do? And what are you learning in this season?
Okay, so I'm Jenny. Hey, I head up the Standout Girl community. We try and help cultivate that, which I love. So I love that. I love people. I love getting to know people, helping people, all sorts of stuff, people orientated. So that's what do I love. What do I do? I'm a full-time mum. I have 3 children, 7, 5 and almost 2, or 7, almost 5 and almost 2. And I also have a dog. So my hands are pretty full. And I also do this too, like on the side. There's a bit of a side hustle. So that's what I do. And what am I learning in this season? I feel like I've been learning this for a long time, but I'm still learning to continue to wait well for some things. And it's been a long season of waiting and a long season of learning to wait well. I've not waited well and it's not been great. And it's a fine balance and a juggling between, lots of things when you're waiting for stuff to come through. So, that's what I'm learning right now still.
And that's so good. And I think that just sums up your heart. The fact that you're even going, I'm in a waiting season, but I want to wait well. Like, I walk alongside you closely and I've seen you flesh that out, wrestle with that, but do it. And actually your heart posture is one of, I just want to do what you want, Jesus. And I love that about you. And I think you exemplify that and you're doing it. So I am proud. I'm a proud friend, but I'm also so excited that we actually get to chat. How do you recognize the season that you're in? Because we talk about, I feel like, for backstory for anyone else, we see each other every Wednesday. For 7 years, we've met once or twice a week, every week, without fail, pretty much. And we talk about seasons a lot. What season are we in? What's God saying? What do we do? How do we navigate it well? So I feel like in our friendship, it's a big thing that we unpack regularly. But it's a big thing.
We've been through a lot of seasons with each other as well. And, we walked through a lot together, I think, haven't we?
Yeah, totally. We really have. And so I'm so looking forward to it. So I'm going to kick off. We've kind of prepared some questions, but this is a chat, isn't it? We're having a heart to heart. Like I said, if anyone's listening or watching, just 2 friends chatting. And we hope that actually what you get from this is, 1, you realize you're not alone, but 2, maybe something sparks in your heart or resonates with you and helps you or whatever. That's our heart. But I want to know, and we'll chat about this, but how do you recognize the season that you're in?
Well, I've been thinking about this quite a lot recently, and I think hindsight is a wonderful thing. I think it's very easy to look back, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to notice the season you've been, or suddenly go, that makes sense. That season I was, X, Y, Z. But actually working it out, I don't know about you, but I have to think about it a lot and actually have to take some time and be quiet. And I think sometimes I have to work out how I'm feeling as well. I wouldn't say feelings aren't gospel as far as I'm concerned. Like, I know my feelings lie to me often, but sometimes they're a good indicator or a good marker of where you're at in life and often how you feel about things can be like a marker or a pointer to something else. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, if I feel stressed or tense about something, then I go, oh, hang on a minute, I don't have peace about this, so that's not a good thing to be doing or a place to be going or whatever. What about you?
I honestly agree with that. And I think when you say about the feelings thing, actually God's a holistic God. He made feelings, he made us to feel. And I think so often we can think that it's like it's not very spiritual to feel our feelings or to think those things or allow them room, because we should think spiritual, supernatural, holy things. But actually, when we deny how we feel, we're not in reality, we're in denial. And actually, if you're not in reality, you're not in spirituality, because an authentic spiritual life is a complete commitment to reality and walking now with Jesus. And so I think actually it's really important to sense how you feel. So I really agree with that. I would say, oh, carry on.
I was just going to say, I remember one specific time where I really, we'd been through a really stressful season, my husband and I. We'd been in a tiny, small little flat with our first baby, and we'd finally moved into a proper house, and sort of this stressful season had come to an end. And I remember standing in the kitchen and just feeling relieved that I'd shut the door on that chapter, and I felt it was the relief and the kind of just exhaling, breathing out. And I always felt like God's like, I don't know whether I actually heard him say it, but I just felt this impression of like, this is a season of rest and relaxation. And you know, and that came from a feeling of relief, a feeling of being settled, a feeling of like, oh, it's done, like you know, going forward is going to be different. And and we really lent into that, a couple of like, this, we're in a different season now, like the job is done, and we're going to acknowledge this is a season of rest, and what are we going to do to rest in that season.
So good. And I think God, like even negative emotions, God can speak through that. Like if you're feeling tense, anxious, angry, it's like it's all giving you an indication, what is going on here, what's happening. I would say for me, recognizing the season you're in, like you're saying, what is actually spending time in stillness and silence before God to give him a word in edgeways, but actually to just commune. When you're communing with Jesus, it's like, I feel like he's always speaking to us. And so recognizing the season you're in for me is like, what do I feel like the Lord is saying to me right now and speaking to me? What's he impressing in my heart? Like right now, I feel like he's working some things out of me. And so it's like, that's a season, I can recognize that season by where he's taking me spiritually. But also, like, we always say this, what's in your hand, what's in your heart? Because actually a season that we're in actually is like recognizing what is actually in my care right now. What do I have to steward faithfully? And with that, I think comes limits, God-given limits. And we talk about this all the time. We've got 3 kids. We've got 6 kids between us. And there's limits that come with that. And so like we could want to travel the world and do whatever. I don't want to, like, in that, but you know what I mean? And we can't, because we have 3 kids who are young and infant and need us. And so I think recognizing the season actually goes, what are the limits, the God-given limits in this time of my capacity, my energy, my emotional reserve? What am I good at? Because actually I could want to do something, but I'm not gifted for that. And so it's like, what's the limits? Is like embracing that and then prioritizing, okay, what's the best thing for right now? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've chatted to you ages, like on and off all the time, about starting some little business, but I just don't feel it's the right season for me at the moment. You know, and that could be quite frustrating sometimes as well. Sometimes you could be in a season that you don't want to be in, actually. Like we've been through seasons of a lack as a family, where it was like even a massive stretch to have someone over for dinner because we just couldn't afford the extra food, you know, and we love hosting, and that was really hard for us. But there was other stuff to be learned in that season, you know. And looking back now, like, you can't, very often you don't see the worth, or you don't see the value of the season that you're in, but it's not until you've come through it and out of it that you can look back and see the lessons that you've learned. So definitely. And like limitations financially, or limitations like with time, like time is a resource, and you know, I just don't have time for certain things that I want to do, or certain people I want to see, you know. It's just and I think actually you can stress yourself out, stretching out beyond the season that you're in as well, I think, which probably is circling around to one of the questions we were going to ask about why it's important. But
that's so good though, because I think on that, it's like the world has a different, we were saying this on a walk the other day, the world has a very different standard of what successful living looks like. And when we don't actually pause, look at what God's given us, what he's saying to our heart and soul, what limits he's put within us and what limits we've got physically around us, and we push that, we actually often, if we trace it back, it can be because we feel like we're missing out or we're failing or we're not meeting the mark. But actually, God's definition of successful living is very different. That's why we have to really zone out. And like, I admire that when you're going, it's not the right season, because not now doesn't mean not ever. And actually it's learning what's right for right now, isn't it? And it changes all the time.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So you sent something and you said, how does knowing your season, how does it actually help you? Like, what's the benefit in recognizing and knowing the season you're in? What do you think it is?
I think it keeps healthy boundaries, doesn't it? Like, I think that, like you said, there are God-given limits and different limits for different seasons. And I think, if you're working within the parameters of what you've got for that time and that season, you're in a good place. But when you're going out beyond what you've been gifted for that time and that season, that's when you're doing it in your own strength and you're not in the Lord's strength. And that's where it gets tiring and we get stressed and we get worn out and we get overexerted because we're acting outside of that God-given boundary for that time. Like with 3 kids and the busy life that we have at the moment, if I was to suddenly take on some sort of, I don't know, side job or something else, that's outside of my limitations. And actually I would have nothing left come the end of the day for my children, for my family, which is my primary objective at the moment. My season, like the overriding season, is my motherhood season at the moment. And I'm trying to do that well. And by doing that well is making sure that I have enough time, energy and resources to give to my family. Ideally not starting a business, because I don't have the capacity for it. And if I was to force and push that through, I'd be a mess. So I think as well, like, and also different people are gifted with different capacities and different seasons, because you're in the motherhood season, but you also have the capacity to run Standout Girl. I couldn't do what you're doing, but that's fine. That's your race to run, and I'm doing what I can do over here. But and that is something as well that I think we sometimes wrestle with as well. We look at other people in other seasons and we compare, don't we? I think, I can be very guilty of that, comparing myself and thinking, I'm not as spiritually forward as they are, or I'm not like, using all my gifts and my talents like they are, or, but we're all in our own race, aren't we? And we're all in our own seasons, and it looks very different.
Absolutely. And in Proverbs 31, it says her arms are strong for her tasks. And that always resonates with me, because I'm like, actually, she's not strong for her friend's task, her neighbour's task. She's actually been graced with God-given ability for the work he's called you to do. And actually, like Ephesians 2:10 tells us, before we were even born, before we were even made, God prepared good work for us to do, and he wrapped our being in it to outwork it. We weren't created for work. Work was created for us to do. And actually, there's a real freedom that comes from just going, you know what? I'm listening to you, God.
I was just going to say the same thing. Yeah. Freedom.
Yeah. So, and
I think
carry on.
Carry on. It's liberating, isn't it? Knowing that, like, you don't have to look at, I don't know, whoever over there and think, oh my goodness, they're doing so well, I need to strive to be as good as them and do what they're doing. Actually, I'm designed to be me, and that's okay. Like, this is how God's designed me. And that, I find that really liberating, because it takes your eyes off the other things that would disvalue you, discount you, or make you feel worthless or not good enough. And you're just concentrating on what God's asked you to do. And that, there's a real freedom in that.
Totally. And actually, what's even more scary, and not in like a condemnation scary way, but actually, if we tend to what God hasn't asked us to tend to or called us to do, what we might think is successful by the metric we're living to, actually God might define as we failed in that, because we haven't done what he wanted us to do. Do you know what I mean? So that's why it's so important, and to radically shift our perspective. But I think also on why it's so important, I think it, like with what we're saying is, it helps you recognize what you do have in this season rather than what you don't have and want. And actually helps you with that, dig for the discipline to cultivate that, to tend to it. I think it helps you to treasure the time, because if you're in a season that's this, you actually have to go, if you want to go, heaven's my audience, I trust God, he will transition me out of seasons, then actually treasuring the time looks like going, I'm not going to strive, but stride through this. I'm going to walk with you. I'm going to soak up the lessons. And I think it actually helps us to recognize the responsibility that we do have in this season. Like you were saying, we're mums to little kids. You have a 1-year-old, I have a 2-year-old, and it's a very demanding age, isn't it? And actually recognizing our responsibilities helps us to make the best yes, and actually discern what is right for right now. So you're saying, like, it's not right for me to do a business. That might be part of my future, but right now it's not the right time. And I think that's why it's so important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the one thing I'd add to that you said about, I can't remember what you said, something about transitioning you from one season to another. We're not in Narnia under White Witch's Wall. Like, seasons change. Like, it's not going to be winter forever. And I think sometimes that could be our other problem. We're impatient to move on to the other season, but actually there's incredibly valuable lessons to be learned in every season that we're in. Like, it's not always going to be winter. It's not always going to be autumn. Like, they come and they end as well eventually, because you can't live life just licking lollipops and sunbathing in the garden, you know. And I think I did this on a little live Zoom, but I walk the dog in the countryside quite often, and I'm really aware of the seasons there, even just agriculturally, that like there's, you know, the seasons where the ground just lies fallow and they'll leave a field for a whole year because it needs time to rest and recuperate. It needs time for things that are like dead to break down and the nutrients be released back into the soil. And then the spring comes and stuff comes up and they sow things and they harvest things, and, you know, and there's a natural, beautiful rhythm to it. And that's like life too for us. Sometimes our seasons can feel like they go on forever, but they don't. They do eventually come to an end.
Yeah, so good. And it's like we've got a rose bush in our garden, and I'm not a gardener. I have no idea what I'm doing. So it was just annoying me because it's getting to winter, and it was just like it was just everywhere. So I cut it, not knowing you actually meant to prune it. I cut it right back to like the stump, so you couldn't even tell there was anything there or should be there. And I was just like, job done. Winter, spring. But honestly, this summer it came back with a vengeance. There was like 30 full bloom red roses on it. And I was like, actually, there's something to be learned in that. Like, in winter, it looked like a withered rubbish stump. In summer, it's like harvest time. And it's like, God is a God of seasons, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and thank goodness for that. Like,
praise the Lord. Okay. So we used to talk about there's a shift in seasons, and God is a God of seasons. We're not in Narnia, thank God. Although sometimes I think, like, under Aslan's reign, that would have been amazing.
Hanging out with Reaper Cheap.
Every time I see the film, I think that Turkish delight looks so. I don't like Turkish delight, but they make it look so juicy, don't they? Like a massive jelly baby, like a really soft, huge cube jelly baby. Anyway, okay, what was I saying? I've gone. I'm in the snow eating texture like a White Witch. But what are markers of change then that you are transitioning out of a season?
Oh, yeah. See, I'm trying to take a note of these myself personally. I feel like we're transitioning out into a new season at the moment. I'm not quite sure what the new season looks like. But yeah, I don't know. I think we've got a real sense of peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you can obviously have that mid-season as like things are going on, but we've had a lot of change recently, and there's been a real peace over it. And I think physical change can just be a simple marker. I think we don't need to over spiritualize it. Sometimes things naturally change, moving location, moving job, starting a new church, all of that sort of stuff. Actual physical earthly things can be a signal of a new season. We don't need to over spiritualize it. So I think just sometimes it's just a bit of a heart switch, isn't it? Like a heart shift sometimes, and suddenly I find myself prompted to do more particular things, like I don't know, be more generous. And suddenly there's lots of people that pop up that I think, oh, I could bless them with this, or I could treat them to a coffee, or I could, and so, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's a mixture of like physical, tangible things, but then also I think there is the spiritual sort of, you just feel a shift in your spirit sometimes, I think. But again, you've got to take time to notice that, haven't you? You've got to quiet yourself before God, and you've got to say, okay, what is this feeling? Why do I feel like this? Or is this going somewhere? So yeah, it's a mixture.
Totally.
What would you say?
I totally agree. Like physical signs, like exactly like I said, you have a new baby, you move jobs, you get married, they're like markers of a shift in season. So I totally agree. And also spiritually, but I think also when you hear people say, I can't hear God, I'm not sure. I know sometimes there are seasons, and I've experienced it myself, where you actually go, God, I'm really struggling. I'm doing everything I know to do. I'm practicing being still and silent. I'm communing with you. I'm reading your word. But I'm not hearing you. Like, and I think there's something you want to add on silence here, like about not taking that to hold, like, say now. Like, because we can interpret the silence, can't we, negatively, but.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think was it Helen Azer, wasn't it, that we were on with doing a Zoom call, and she mentioned the fact that as a child, if she was bad, I think it was her dad would give her the silent treatment, and so she came to view silence as sort of the cold shoulder, or like she'd done something wrong. It was a punishment type thing. And so when God was quiet with her, that was the same association she had, when actually she's come to realize that we interpret God's silence how we've experienced silence, and when actually it could just be companionship, like God's just actually just enjoying your company, enjoying what you're doing, and is just quietly sitting by, just watching you get on with it. And there's a pleasure and a contentment in that from him. So yeah, that's that little small snippet of that Zoom that we did has massively changed my perception, and it's removed a lot of insecurities. And because sometimes when God does go quiet, you can be like, thinking, what have I done wrong? Have I not been reading my Bible enough? Am I reading the right books? And have I not, and you start soul searching, don't you, thinking, what have I done wrong? But actually, I think sometimes it's just the quiet contentedness of God saying, just carry on, child.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
carry on.
No, go on. I was just saying, I love that. Like,
well, like I last year I got a really clear word for the year. Like I really seek God about it, and it usually comes out of the blue. So I try. It has a weight to it. I feel like it's not just me making it up. And this year I didn't get one at all, and I interpreted that as like, oh God, like what's going on? But then actually I'm choosing to go, well, He hasn't given me a new one. Maybe it's just the same. Maybe it's just carry on. The same thing, just carry on. But also, like, we did a masterclass a coaching session recently, and the lady said, actually, if we're in the word of God, it's the living, breathing, active word of God. So God actually is always speaking to us. But I know when it comes to seasons, we can be really hungry to go, okay, speak directly, define this, what is happening here? So I would say some markers of like a change in season are actually, what's your spirit like you're saying, what's your spirit saying? If you're in communion with God, if you're being still before Him, surrendering your will, reading the word, I think your spirit starts to awaken to certain things if there's a transition coming, exactly like you're saying. And I think also an indicator of changing seasons can be energy and passion. Like, I don't know if you've ever felt like when you're in a season that is the right fit and you're doing the right thing at the right time, there is an energy for it, there's a passion for it, there's a natural grace for it. But I think sometimes when you're coming to an end or shifting into a season, actually a notice, and it's not to be mistaken for you just can't be bothered, because we all have days when you just can't be bothered. Like, everyone has those days. And I think you know the difference. But actually, if sometimes you're going, I don't have the energy for this, I don't have the vision, I don't have the passion, it might be a sign that actually that's run its course and there's something new. And that's when I think it's speaking, getting confirmation from God. He always confirms. And speaking to community, getting your friends, your family, your trusted mentors to go, I think this, do you think this could line up? Does this resonate? Can you speak into this? Like, help me if it's a big decision. But yeah, I think God's really good. And he always speaks, and he doesn't leave us hanging. He's the shepherd who guides us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes we can get a bit too intense, can't we, about these sorts of things? Like maybe like fixated on, I've got to know what it is. But there's a real, like, I don't know. I've just really learned to rest in God and not be so insecure about my position in him as well. I think I've really come to understand my position as his daughter and just how much he loves us. And and like we can do no wrong, like in his eyes, you know, in some ways. But there's no punishment or like I don't know, condemnation for getting it wrong. Like we're working things out down here, and he just wants to do that alongside us. And
and actually the goal of being a Christian is to become to become a person of love, to actually become who God made us to be, and to outwork what he has called us to do. And actually that throughout every season is the same. So in some sense, even if it feels really up in the air, that's the same. That's the calling of the Christian life. Become more like Jesus and do what he tells you. That's the same throughout every season. And actually, I think sometimes a lot of angst for me personally can come from concern about what is it I'm meant to be doing? Where's my future going? And actually, if we rest on that promise of Ephesians 2:10, God's already, before we were even here, he's already prepared it and outworked it for us, laid it out, ready for us to get our hands to it. So he's a good God. He's not going to just like let you miss it. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the fear, isn't it? We're going to miss it.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's okay. Oh, it was so good talking to you about this. I could talk about seasons all day, but it's been amazing. And we hope couple of quick fire questions actually, Jem.
Oh gosh, okay.
What is your biggest pet peeve?
Oh gosh, dirty cold dishwashing water left up in the bowl with the washing up. Straight off the bat. 100%.
Would you rather have living plants or dried flowers?
Living plants.
Okay. And beach with a book or adventure?
Oh, see, that's a tough one because I need a bit of both.
If you could only have one.
Oh gosh, okay, adventure.
Really? Oh, okay. I'm impressed. But honestly, it was so good talking to you. You are a breath of fresh air. You have so much wisdom. Your heart is solid gold. And as a friend, I love you. And I know our community that we're building love you too. So it was an honor to talk with you. And guys, wherever you are, wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching, we hope this has encouraged you, inspired you, helped you, or just reminded you that you are not alone in wrestling with seasons and all of that. So until next time, everybody, we will see you soon. Goodbye.